Vanillaware is a developer that I've had a lot of respect for a long time. You might not know their name, but you've probably seen some of the work they've put out over the last 20 plus years. Games like Muramasa, The Demon Blade, Odin Sphere, and many others have this incredibly distinct 2D art style to them that you can't really miss. But as much as I admire the look of these games, and I've even picked up a few of them myself, I've never actually sat down and finished any of them. I played 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim on the Switch, and I put a few hours into it, but I just didn't click with it the same way that I wanted to. But despite that, I still really appreciated the art style and the visuals of it. For one reason or another, despite how impressive the visuals of these games are, I do find myself bouncing off of them from time to time. But recently, I decided to go all the way back to check out their very first game, which isn't even technically from Vanillaware yet, Princess Crown for the Sega Saturn. The game was made by Vanillaware before they split off from Atlus and started to technically do their own thing. You can see this relationship even today, where a lot of Vanillaware games are published by Atlus. But Princess Crown has all of the hallmarks of a Vanillaware RPG. Unique gameplay tied into 2D environments, made in a painterly anime aesthetic. When I first heard about this one, I just thought it looked so visually unique and interesting, and it was one of those games that when I first got my Saturn, I knew I had to check out right away. Coming out originally near the end of 1997, Princess Crown was critically acclaimed, but never made it out of Japan. It's seen ports on the PSP and PS4 just in Japan, but without any official translation, it's not really easy to play it. So today I'll be playing a fan-translated patch that's released for the original Sega Saturn version. I can't read Japanese, so it'll be only off of what that translation is, so if names are a little different in different localizations or translations, that's just what I'm going off of. But with that out of the way, let's jump into Princess Crown and see what it's all about. After a surprisingly intense intro screen, Princess Crown starts with a cute little diegetic menu of a little girl having a fairy tale read to her. You walk over, pick up a book and bring it over, and then select a bookmark to pick a save file. The story proper begins in the kingdom of Valendia, which some time ago was attacked by demons seeking their queen's royal blood. Their queen defeats the invaders and the kingdom is returned to peace, skipping forward in time another 25 years. Now the princess, Gradriel, is starting her own journey as she learns to become a young queen herself. Gradriel is naive but kind, and cares for the people of her kingdom, but after hearing of the increasing troubles with the common folk, she decides to take it upon herself to explore the world and help the people of her kingdom. Despite the wishes of the castle's wizard and other royals, she decides to sneak away from her duties and explore. That's not long before she runs into Arya, a fairy who decides to accompany her as the fairies that she lives with have been accused of kidnapping children in the nearby town. That gives Gradriel her first objective, and the two set out from there. That's the general idea with Princess Crown's story, at least for the bulk of this first section. Gradriel and Arya explore the Valendia together, solving the troubles of a few different cities as they explore and meet new and interesting characters. Overall, the storytelling is serviceable, and it's made up of the typical sword and sorcery fare you might expect. But in a way, that's kind of exactly what I was here for, especially when it's combined with the game's fantastic presentation. Vanillaware's signature art style carries on from here to even more richly detailed games in their future, but this is really where it all began, and you can already see the vision. Princess Crown, and many of Vanillaware's games for that matter, tend to age so well because of their use of flat hand-drawn artwork. The characters in Princess Crown are so well animated and have so much detail to their sprites that it's worth playing the game just to see it all in action. Every moment of each character is given so much weight, and it's all in service to the details. There's little subtle touches to Gradual's movements, like the hair moving while she's running, or the simple fact that she looks up and down to properly talk to people. Not to mention the punchiness of the animations during combat, it's all really great to see. While some NPCs can have more simplistic sprites, whenever you meet a named character, they almost always come with a set of expressive animations that really bring them to life. Take for example this knight named Edward that you meet pretty early on in the game. It's hard not to appreciate that attention to detail. Enemies as well have the same care put into them, and they all look great, especially for the time. Like the demons for example have just so much detail to them, it's really crazy to see. The Saturn and PlayStation 1 era had so much great 2D sprite work, but the transition to 3D meant that a lot of games like this weren't as common as time went on. And even if after this Vanillaware themselves moved to more detailed sprites on higher resolution hardware, I think seeing that style in this lower resolution sprite form was also pretty cool. All of this on a console that already has some pretty fantastic sprite animation to it, I found Princess Crown just so impressive. And it's not just a good looking game either, because the gameplay and the combat actually is pretty fun as well. The combat system in Princess Crown is actually somewhat unique for an action RPG, especially for the time. It reminded me a lot of a fighting game where you only face off against one opponent at a time in these sort of one-on-one duels. You always face your enemy, and you can press up to jump and even hold back to block like in Street Fighter. Pressing C will swing Gradual's sword, doing a different attack depending on whether you're in the air or crouching or pressing it multiple times. And if you hold B when attacked, you enter this quick menu that lets you dash and dodge forward or backward behind the enemy. You can also press A to bring up an inventory, but early on it's mostly just to eat food to heal. That all sounds good, but there is a level of clunkiness that you have to get used to. You move pretty slowly in and out of combat, and you use up a power meter whenever you try to do an action. If you attack continuously, hold block, or dodge, you'll run out of power pretty fast and then get punished for it. If an enemy is throwing out an attack while you're holding back, you'll put yourself into a block stance that actually will waste your meter without you meaning to. There's a really great sense of impact when you hit stuff like I mentioned, but those long animations might make things feel a little heavier than you might expect. There aren't any animation cancels or other things that make modern games feel a lot smoother to play, and that means that you just have to be a little more thoughtful when making moves. You really have to commit to your attacks and make use of all of the moves at your disposal, while avoiding wasting your precious power meter by blocking. As I made my way through the game's story, there was a funny sort of progression here for me. At first, when I first started the game, I thought it was really cool, and then I started feeling like it was a little too clunky, but eventually I did come back around and start having fun with it. After enough time with Princess Crown, combat just started to click for me. I learned how to be deliberate with each attack, when to dodge or block, and started to be a bit more patient with troublesome enemies. Something I thought was pretty cool was that enemies can do basically anything that you can. They're allowed to block and dodge, and some even use items if you give them the chance. So it never feels like the fights are just one-sided. Depending on the level, certain enemies as simple as a slime can mess you up. After a while, I'd figure out how each enemy type acts, what attacks to expect from them, and use that to capitalize on openings. I really felt like you could convert this into an actual 2D fighting game, which I couldn't say about a lot of RPG battle systems.
Hyper Combo KO! You win!
One thing though that I did have some trouble getting used to initially was the item and inventory system. When you first start the game, Gradual can only hold a maximum of 16 items, 8 in your equipped bag for battles and 8 in storage. Later, as you play through the story, you can get extra storage bags, but the way the system works, I was constantly needing to sort things out and rummage through the junk that I gathered. It took me a while to figure out what things even did before I could properly make use of the game's pretty robust set of items. There's the food I mentioned earlier, which works as you might expect. But there were also scrolls for temporary buffs, magical gems that cast spells, and equipment that offered unique passive abilities. The only thing to note is that in Princess Crown, everything is a consumable. You can save things for later, of course, but even equipment would break eventually. It's a little bit like in Zelda Breath of the Wild. That might help you get the idea. Basically, the only thing Galadriel has permanently were upgrades for Arya and her sword. For the first few hours of the game, I probably used next to no spells and mostly just stuck to eating food to recover. But eventually, I'd find that these and the scrolls were a huge help in later fights. Maybe certain enemies would give me a bit more trouble than I'd want, and so I'd commit a spell to make my life easier. Or maybe I just wanted to chuck something at them to clear up space in the bag. These goblins will show up and snatch stuff that you leave on the ground for too long, so there is a level of tension. If a good item shows up, you need to rush to grab it. Boss encounters as well were perfect opportunities to break out your best spells, and then I'd spend the rest of the trip to the next dungeon building up an inventory for the next fight. Stacking as many buffs as I possibly could and trying to get the most out of them in the 20 seconds it gave you was really fun and engaging. Overall, the items made up a surprisingly large amount of the gameplay, not something I expected, but I think that after some issues with poor inventory management, it ended up being a lot better off for it. And all that's not even to mention the crafting system, which is somewhat elaborate. You gather components in a variety of things to make potions or food, but I ended up mostly relying on drops from enemies and stuff you'd find in stores. And by the midpoint of the game, realistically, you have plenty of options to choose from. Hey, just a heads up, if you're enjoying this video so far, it would be really great if you could subscribe to the channel and like the video. Doing that stuff really supports the channel and helps this video reach more people who might enjoy it. Thanks. Let's get back to it. There's a certain sense of monotony to the game, but I did find myself just comfortably riding through it, and it would improve over time. The slow movement speed and long hallways make the combat feel a bit more repetitive than it really is, but new places to explore would often just feel like a real treat. Maybe you'll save a desert town from a basilisk, or maybe you'll help a peaceful siren prove their innocence. The earlier sections had this real episodic storytelling to it that would make the repetitive gameplay loop a bit easier to swallow. Honestly, my biggest problem with the overworld in Princess Crown was just the amount of time you spend talking to random NPCs while just trying to figure out where to go next. The world map is built out of multiple branching forks, but most of the time you have to find out where to go by talking to everybody that you meet in the hopes that the correct NPC will just instruct Galadriel on how to actually go somewhere. There had to have been a dozen times where I accidentally missed talking to the correct person and found myself confused on where to go, usually followed by 20 minutes of talking to every person in the town. Something as simple as an exclamation mark over their heads would have gone really far here, I think, to give you some more direction. It's always just a little too hard in a lot of older RPGs to find out exactly who you need to talk to go to whatever place, and the same can be said here. It's just made even worse by your pretty slow movement speed. At this point, everyone's problems from the beginning of the game had been solved, so Galadriel returns to the castle. But just as soon as you return, you find out that Ariel, one of her two sisters, has been taken away to a tower in the Black Forest to be used as a way to reopen the gate to the demon realm. Throughout the game, you've periodically run into this red witch, who's certainly a Vanillaware character, and she seems to have taken Galadriel's sister for use in a ritual. Atop the tower, it's revealed that a demonic book has possessed Ariel, and the demon realm is opened once again. And then it's followed by a really cool set piece where all of those characters that you were meeting along the way converge to protect the castle. After all the running around, I felt like this is really where the story started to pick up. They manage to save Ariel, but the damage has been done, and the demons make off with the third sister instead, Sidrael. All of that puts Gradriel back out into the world to find a way to seal the demon realm, just like her mother did before. From here on, this is where Princess Crown really started to click with me. It's a really beautiful game to look at, but I also was pretty comfortable with the gameplay loop at this point. As long as you can be okay with some of the pretty tedious sections, it felt like the game started to reward your patience with the cool story moments and new items and side quests to chew on. The story starts introducing pirates, ancient dragons, and even a little time travel to spice things up. And side quests started to show up pretty often as well, often giving meaningful rewards like inventory space or extra powers for Arya. Yes, the walking can be slow, and yes, the combat is pretty clunky to control, but I found myself going from section to section and having a good time with it. By this point, item management was also just a thing of the past, and I had plenty of gold reserves to replenish anything I wanted, so long as I cycled enemy drops through as well. The problem with equipment breaking was also no longer an issue, as you can find scrolls to build up resistance pretty often in treasure chests. Your limited inventory meant that it was always kind of fun to organize a strategy, putting together certain buffs in preparation for boss fights and stuff like that. At one point, it became obvious to me that there are some things that are pretty broken and you can take advantage of, but I never felt like the game was a complete cakewalk. Following a few more dungeons and towers, Gradriel manages to save her sister from the King of the Demons and returns to the castle in peace. I thought that was the end of the game, but it happens to be that the evil has spread and needs to be stopped at the source, but not before the demon book possesses another of Gradriel's friends, the mage Leon, who sets off to gather the two crowns of the major kingdoms, Gradriel's crown and the crown of the king across the sea. Now it becomes a race to get to Volga Castle before Leon does, but by the time she gets there, it's already too late. There's this whole thing about Gradriel channeling her dark side, also a little too Vanillaware for me, and you end up earning Dark Gradriel as a transformation power-up. Though I didn't get much use out of it, the boss fight was a fun time. If I had to be honest, I don't think I like this last section of the game as much as that middle sort of section where things started to get going. It just felt like there wasn't that much gas left in the tank. This last act does feel a bit jumbled up compared to the part with Volgrod, the King of Demons. That middle portion had so much more variety with the time travel and new locations and even smaller individual stories. Whereas by the time you get to Volga Castle, it's kind of just the same thing again. And that's really the running issue with Princess Crown, because there is so much repetition, especially when it comes to dungeons, which all boil down to caves or towers. As much as I was enjoying the moment-to-moment battling and dungeon crawling, eventually you kind of realize that you've been here before and you just need something new to spice it up, which the middle section of the game had a lot more of. All of this leads Gradriel back to home base, only for Leon to invade once again and take out all of the allies she'd made along the way, finally taking both crowns for himself. You spent a lot of the time traveling around chasing Leon, and him being the penultimate boss felt a little unearned considering you barely know the guy. Still, you get to jump into the portal and take on the true final boss, Larva, the god of evil himself. Volgrod does get a chance to shine a little bit here and help out, but the boss fight is the highlight. I don't know if it was because I ran the game off of a Saru emulator cartridge thing, but my Saturn was lagging really bad here with all the large sprites on screen. You take turns knocking off each of his arms while trying to get hits on the head when you can. It's classic big boss stuff, and it was pretty funny to see the game speed up back to normal when more arms were removed. After Larva is defeated though, the evil that plagued Valendia is finally gone. Arya departs with the other fairies, and Gradriel returns to repairing the kingdom. It might have felt like that was a really sudden way to end the game, but that's not really the ending at all. Yeah, it turns out that Princess Crown, after completing the main story, goes full Sonic Adventure, and you have 3 other mini adventures to play through featuring other main characters you met along the way, starting with Edward the Knight, then Portgas the Pirate, and Prosperina the Witch. While Gradriel's story clocks in around 15 to 20 hours, the others are closer to 2 to 3 each, focusing around whatever it was that they were doing between meeting Gradriel. Edward travels around looking for his lost father and eventually defeats the demon that killed him. Portgas hunts for a special jewel that can show him the demon that killed his love, and Prosperina runs around in circles looking for a way to conjure up a potion to be cooler than Gradriel. They're all fine side stories in their own ways, but as much as I was enjoying the ride up to that point, the repetitive gameplay really started to come full force here. A big part of this for me, I think, was because I was mentally prepared to be done after the main story, but also because Prosperina's story in particular is exceptionally slow. Edward's was first, so it was maybe a little more refreshing. Portgas' story is very short and sweet, but hers was this multi-hour fetch quest. Not to mention that the new perspectives meant running through the same handful of dungeons, roads, or caves for maybe the 10th time. You climb the towers so often, I ended up drawing a path on an image just in case I had to come back later. For most of the game, I'd fall into this rhythm and have a good time, but the rampant reuse of the exact same locations absolutely hurts the experience. It didn't completely ruin the game for me, but it certainly made the last 6-hour stretch or so feel like it was a bit more of homework. There's something to be said about the ways a new player character can make a game feel fresh again, but I sort of wish Princess Crown took another approach to it. I actually really enjoyed playing as most of these characters, except for Prosperina, but I think if you unlock these stories maybe throughout the game and the game give you a clear opportunity to try them, it could have served as a good break from the main story. Maybe it wouldn't work perfectly that way, but something more spread out certainly would have made it feel like less of a grind. Once all 4 books are finished, the final golden book appears, known as The Last Story, unrelated. Obviously, doing all the stories here had to give you the true ending, and that's the case here. Every character, other than Prosperina, interacts with Hindel, an ancient dragon that offers his wisdom to those that bring one of 4 special stones to him. With 3 in total, he returns to Gradriel at night and tells her that these stones were once ancient dragons, just like him. The goddess of light, opposite to Larva, Gaia, split herself into these 4 stones when evil corrupted the land, and now with the evil finally banished, these stones can be reunited, but first Gradriel must defeat Hindel in battle to retrieve his final stone. So Hindel is the true final boss, though he's just a juiced up dragon like many of the ones you've fought at this point. Still, it was a really fun battle, and I had a good time piloting Gradriel one last time. The dragons were by far the most challenging of the standard enemy types in the game anyway, and there were dozens of times I'd run into a high-level dragon and have to lock in for a bit. The final book is short, with nothing much to it other than the last encounter. Thankfully, my inventory was completely stacked from the end of the game, and I could just run through Hindel without much effort. With the stones returned, Gaia appears to Gradriel for one last Vanillaware character moment. But now Valendia has truly been saved, and peace and love can return to the kingdom once again, taking us to the end of Princess Crown. You know, the cool thing about playing older games is that every once in a while you'll catch a glimpse of something that you'd never heard of, and you just know that it's going to work out for you. I felt that way with Princess Crown. It's hard to ignore how unique this game looks. Even though you could argue it doesn't properly do Vanillaware's art style justice because of the hardware at the time, I think that the low spec actually kind of makes it more interesting. I instantly was on board with this game's art direction, but getting to play the game and actually getting familiar with the combat mechanics and the gameplay and the story, characters and all that stuff, I actually got even more into it, and I was really happy to see that. Things are certainly a little slower than I might like at times with Princess Crown. You move a little slow, and the combat, the random encounters do add up, especially at the end of the game. But I just really was having a good time with this one. I'd also be remiss not to mention Dragon's Crown, the PS3 game. It's more of a co-op version of Princess Crown as far as I understand, but it is certainly a sequel of sorts. If you've played Princess Crown or any Vanillaware games for that matter, let me know down below because I'd love to see what your recommendations are. I find it hard to ignore some of these games because they're just kind of pretty to look at. If you enjoyed the video here and you appreciate what we're doing, I would love it if you could like the video, subscribe, do all that fun stuff because it really does help the channel and lets us continue doing this. That's all I've got for today, so thanks one more time for watching and take care.